South Africa's information regulator is battling to cope with rising incidents of data breaches, and funding is said to be a major problem. The regulator monitors compliance by companies to prevent sensitive consumer information landing in the wrong hands. Credit bureau Experian has reported that personal details belonging to 24 million consumers and 800,000 businesses were handed over to an alleged fraudster. Let's speak now to the chairperson of the information regulator, Advocate Pansy Tlakula, about this and other matters. Advocate Tlakula, good morning and thank you very much for your time. Can we start with this Experian situation, which is the latest that has come up? There's been a number of other data breaches, but this is seemingly recently the biggest one in terms of numbers. I understand you've been engaging with Experian and you're supposed to have been meeting with them as recently as yesterday. What are you able to tell us this morning?
Yes, yesterday, good morning, Dan, and good morning to your viewers as well. Yesterday, we had a meeting with the CEO of Experian and his team to just get to the bottom of what happened with what they call a fraudulent misrepresentation. And they gave us a full report of what happened, and that is all in the media. But we wanted to know what steps are they taking, one, to ensure that their technical and organizational measures are adequate so that this does not happen again in the future, and what have they done also to inform the data subjects or persons who have been affected by this. And we asked them to also go back to give us more information also on what is happening on the law enforcement side as well, because this is a criminal offense according to them. So we are satisfied so far with the explanation that they have given us. But I think it's important to say what happened to them should be a lesson for other credit bureaus. Because what also came up is that their authentication processes were a little bit laxed. I think they did not authenticate the alleged client properly.
So the investigation partly is being done by Experian themselves. They've shared with you, in their view, what has transpired. The police are also looking into this alleged fraudulent behavior by one of Experian's stakeholders. You, as a regulator, your mandate, what does it allow you to do now in this particular Experian matter?
See, let's start with the provisions of the Protection of Personal Information Act. It says that responsible parties, and these are really companies and public bodies that process personal information, they have to ensure that they have adequate or reasonable technical and organizational security measures in place to ensure that they protect personal information that they hold. So that's what we were pursuing with them, particularly that in this particular case, they say they did not suffer a data breach. It's a fraudulent, they were a victim of a fraudulent misrepresentation. So we're looking at the adequacy of their organizational measures and also advising them on the measures that they should take to improve those organizational measures. However, you will recall then that the Act came into operation fully on the 1st of July this year, and that's when the President signed a proclamation to bring the legislation into operation. But private and public bodies, in terms of that Act, have a 1-year grace period within which they must put their compliance processes in place, because this is a new piece of legislation, one, and also it comes up with quite heavy sanctions for non-performance, like 10 million, up to 10 million rands fine, up to 10 years imprisonment. That is why everyone is given this 1-year grace period within which to comply, because after, if Experian happened this time, next year would have to conduct a full investigation to determine whether or not there was any non-compliance with the Act, and if we had found that there was non-compliance, then we would then issue them with an enforcement notice that would then oblige them to either pay the 10 million fine or alternatively the 10 years in prison.
Just for understanding, yeah, in this particular Experian case, you are not able to do that now because of this 1-year grace period that you've spoken about. You say in your engagements with them, they accepted responsibility of some laxity. There was a little bit of laxity on their part in terms of how they were then in their systems handing over such information to in this fraudulent transaction, let's call it that for lack of a better description. Are you satisfied that according to what they told you, the laxity is gone?
Yes, they did accept, and it is true that, look, their authentication measures that they took were probably not adequate, but they have tightened that up. We are satisfied with that, but what we also were pushing them to ensure that they have informed everyone who is involved, and we're satisfied with what they explained, what they did to inform people who were affected, and the banks took it upon themselves to inform the 24,000 plus persons whose bank details were also compromised. So the bank said they will inform. So by and large, we are satisfied with what they have done. I think going forward, what we need to do is to ensure that credit bureaus comply with the provisions of the Act, because there's a lot of sharing of information, of personal information, of customers. There are practices, I think, that once the Act has come into operation, those practices have to be changed, because sometimes, I mean, if you collect information, you collect it for a certain purpose. If you use it for any other purpose, then you have to obtain the consent of the owner of the information. So those processes really, and the practices that credit bureaus have been applying, I think they have to change. And even this morning after this interview, we are having a meeting with the Credit Bureau Association just to sensitize everyone that, look, the Act is here, and we have to ensure that everyone complies before we come to apply the sanctions next year.
Okay, well, there's a lot of proactive measures now, lessons learned from the Experian one. Very briefly, Advocate Tlakula, I know you have a very busy diary, as you've just alluded to now. Before we end this interview, you have written to the Treasury. I saw a report earlier that you've written to the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni government, to try and make sure they give you the appropriate level of funding, especially as you build up this coming year towards 2021. What has the response been for the government? Are you going to get the support you need to beef up your muscle so you're able to tackle these very important matters of data breach properly?
Well, you know, the challenge is the economic situation that the country is faced with, and the world indeed. And we are sensitive to that. We are not unreasonable. But all that we are requesting is that Treasury and the Minister should take our special circumstances into operation as they allocate and cut budgets. They have to be sensitive to the fact that, one, we are establishing an organization from scratch. Secondly, that if we talk about the digital economy, we speak about big data, Internet of Things, our organization plays a central role in ensuring that as this technological advancement are applied, we have to ensure that data is protected, because data nowadays is the currency. And if as a country you don't have a functional, effective data protection authority, then it's going to be very difficult for you as a country to even attract direct foreign investment.
Thank you very much. Advocate Pansy Tlakula, the chairperson of the South African Information Regulator.